we gave up privacy for convenience long time ago.
Yeah.
As human race, and it's not coming back. Like, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
It's definitely we gave it away. Like that's a thing of the past, privacy.
I joke all the time with my team, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I just had an AI Savannah that could attend meetings for me when I'm on PTO or answer emails for me.
They're sitting on an incredible wealth of information, and they're not actually using it to disseminate, to ask the why. How do we improve the employee experience, especially in an era where we use technology to leverage just about everything?
You can get information from people based on their habits, based on their patterns, based on how they interact with their job, how they interact with people, how they interact with systems that they use to measure their engagement and say, this is an engaged employee. If an employee is engaged,
what brings you to Atlanta today, this week?
Yeah, I came to meet with a prospect, do an in-person demo, and they asked if I would come in and talk with their executive team, and I was excited to do that. I love visiting Atlanta. It's one of my favorite places to visit, and I thought, well, I have a lot of connections here, and I know some people here, so make the most out of the trip. So I'm just here today and tomorrow, and then I go back.
You're traveling a lot. You told a lot of people. Tell me about, what are things looking like from a tech development perspective, big picture? What are the things that you're seeing in the market? What's going on? What's happening?
I think that, there's the obvious. AI is something that is huge in integrating in all tech. I think it's really great opportunity because it's really agnostic. There's so many ways you can use it, and it's being integrated in such unique and interesting ways. And I think I personally enjoy watching the journey of how we're going to integrate it with the human element and use it as an augmentation to our human power rather than replacing the human power. I think it's similar to the evolution of centralization, where I think all of these initiatives are really optimizing, creating efficiencies for how we already work. And I think that's really cool. Up to date, there's been a lot of focus on the resident experience. And I think social media has for a long time been alerting us or educating us on that, the economics of experience and how it really is something we need to pay forward, right? You give people a good experience and they give you loyalty, and it's kind of an economic situation. A lot of attention has been placed on the resident experience, and I have seen more and more, especially in my space, of focusing more on the employee, of the team member experience. So a lot more tech or solutions that will focus on that employee experience and then lead into the resident experience.
So much to unpack and so many questions coming out of your answer. So first that I can think of, it's like social media. You mentioned social media sending signals, how important these things are. Now, on a content creation side, right? When you're looking at, on one hand, service providers, whether they're companies or not, and then on the other hand, when you're looking at management companies, I think there's incredible opportunities, really. Opportunities being mainly, to me, of creating relevant content that people will stop from their scroll and actually want to read, enjoy reading, something that's not how great we are, how great our services and products are, like actually providing value. Every time I want to get some data, information to support or maybe like contradict one of my theses, things that I'm thinking of, and I try to do research, there's zero data available, public data available. So that makes me think, there's so much data that's being captured and that's being harvested, data points. If we're actually companies are sitting on data, whether they're tech companies or management companies, both. They're sitting on a incredible wealth of information, and they're not actually using it to disseminate, to ask the why. Why is this happening? To better understand. We're sitting on a gold mine that's not really properly harvested and leveraged. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think that there is definitely an evolution that needs to happen in our industry regarding data. I think part of it is the systems and technology that is available and the lack of true integration between them. I think we were behind in tech as an industry for a long time, and then we had some catch up, and so then we have this tech saturation where there's so many technologies that have come out and they're all housing data, but there's very little commonality. Even tech that's been around for ages, like Yardi has been around for decades, and they still don't share their data very well. And, I'm not calling them out by any means, but all of the tech companies are operating independently, and there's a lack of commonality. I think it came up at the RETC event a few weeks ago when we were there, that there needs to be some common data dictionary, like the terms that we use for things, the ways that we calculate certain metrics and that sort of thing, and just being able to cleanly connect our data stack for operators. You have all of these different texts that you use, being able to house them and search across them, cleaning that data and having it available, I think is important for optimization of workflow and being able to ask those questions, like you said, like why, and take deeper analyzing, being able to use that data from all different sorts of companies and how they're doing things, and being able to provide more value with that content, being able to mine that from a content perspective. But also when it comes to AI, right now it's new and exciting and people are using it freely, but soon I think there's going to probably be some regulation behind it, because it's only as good as the data it sits on, and it's not able to decipher bad data from good data, so it gives you some wrong answers sometimes, but it's so confident in its answers, so you want to take it for its word. But I think having, to your point, having that centralized way to access the data and have it cleaner than the data we have right now is important for those factors.
Do you see in the near future AI disrupting the big companies like you mentioned Yardi, right? And we could call any other big shops, not necessarily calling them out by name, but it's a reality. They're hogging data. They're sitting on incredible volumes of data that could be harvested, could be leveraged by companies, but by their clients and also by the industry in general. I think there's a lot of us guessing or being just trying to figure things out in the dark, right? We're operating in the dark. We're making assumptions that are not really backed up by numbers. And my question is, do you think that AI will be like that piece of fabric, that layer that will pull data from big data hoggers like Yardi and other companies, like every company, and just be able to distill it and give the operators the picture that they need to get in order to operate in an awareness state, not blindly?
I think I have a unique perspective on AI where I think that yes, it can take all of the data and it can make some assumptions based on it, some predictions based on it. You can model it and train it to do certain things. But I do think that it needs to augment some human element. We have such great, the adage is, multifamily sucks you in. Nobody means to work in multifamily, but very few of us meant to be here. And we all have those stories. Many of your podcasts share those stories of it just kind of sucks you in and you get in and you just never leave, right? And we may have a high turnover rate among our industry of people moving to different companies, but most people who get into multifamily stay in multifamily. You always hear, I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I've been in the industry for longer than I want to admit. And I think that power of experience is something you will never replicate with AI. And if there was a way for those humans that have been in the industry and have had all of those experience to side by side continually train, have an assistant almost that is monitoring your behavior and you're talking to and you're chatting to and sharing your experience or analyzing the data that you've seen your entire 20, 30, 40 plus years in this industry, for that AI to learn from those professionals versus just sitting on the data and making predictions based on just data alone, is where we will truly see that power of being able to leverage AI with the data that we have.
Basically, you're saying that humans will kind of intervene and model this data to serve them. Basically, in other words, walk me through your vision about how is this going to happen, right? There's data, there's AI that could pull the data and process it in any way you want. How would the humans take advantage of that?
Yeah, so I think, with human capital, and it's something our industry, we're so, I want to say busy, and I know that's a term that sometimes people like to avoid, but we tend to operate very lean, and we have a lot of people who wear multiple hats and need to do multiple things, and there's emergencies that happen all of the time, and a lot of things that happen that cause us to need to take the path of least resistance. And I think with that, a lot of times what happens with our human capital is we don't, especially with the high turnover that we have, it's kind of a catch-22. We don't always continually spend the money and time to continue to train them in the way that they need, or course correct if they're not performing to expectations, and then that ends up causing more turnover, and then we have to spend more time to train new employees. In the same way that with your human capital, you have to continually train people, continue grow people, continue to inform them and provide them with the information they need to do their job. AI is the same way. You can't just train an AI bot and then expect it to operate always. It has to continue to be trained, just like the human capital. And if you look at a lot of companies and operators have had a very successful mentorship program, and that's where it's been successful because you're able to pair with somebody who has that information, readily ask them questions, and have someone that you depend on to teach you the way of your company, of the industry, and help you grow. I've had several mentors myself that have been invaluable in teaching me certain things. And if you think about that mentorship relationship that works for human to human, if there was a way to kind of replicate that from an AI perspective, where the AI had a human mentor that could help them understand the nuances of what we know from all of our experiences. I don't know how to make that work, but that's kind of the metaphor of how I see it working successfully.
I'd love to stay on this more. I'm thinking like this. This is the way I envision training and mentoring working in a future, in a very not distant future, actually in the immediate future. I was actually talking to someone in Chicago that I think has developed tools, a company that has developed tools to produce that type of outcome. But I want to be specific. So I'm thinking with the advent of AI and having AI at our disposal now and how powerful that is, AI could actually understand what's Savannah great at,
Mm-hmm.
and also what her needs are
Yeah.
from a knowledge perspective, training perspective,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of needs. Actually, I think that AI is so great
Yeah.
that actually could know us better than we know ourselves, way better actually.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
technology in general. I think this is not a very new information to me,
Mm-hmm.
because when you think about your habits, you know, where do you go to shop, where do
Yeah.
you travel, everything's tracked.
Yep.
And then the applications like, you know, Facebook and others that we use on a daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
they're just tracking us and they're collecting that data and they're selling them to companies that are trying to sell us products or
Mhm.
services. So they know exactly what you like, they know exactly what you're buying, when you're buying, at what time, and they're trying to target specific ads based on your behaviors,
Yeah.
just so they hit you at the right time with the right product or service so you
Mhm.
could buy. I personally don't actually see that as evil.
Mm-hmm.
I actually see it, if I'm gonna be looking for a pair of Adidas shoes, tennis shoes, would I want in my feed to have, like, you know, a lamp or, you know, deodorant or other things? I will actually like to, you know, see like that type of product exactly when I'm ready to buy.
Yeah.
So it's actually a convenience thing
Yeah.
more than the other way around, where is a privacy thing. We gave up privacy for convenience a long time ago
Yeah.
as human race, and it's not coming back. Like, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
It's definitely, we gave it away. Like, that's a thing of the past, you know,
Mhm.
privacy. So I'm thinking AI and technology knowing exactly what your needs are. I call this, for lack of better words, a training body,
Mm-hmm.
which is an AI agent
Mm-hmm.
that actually follows you around, figuratively speaking,
yeah.
right? And at any given time that you need support, is right there to provide the precise information that you actually need,
Yeah.
to feed you that information right on point.
Mhm.
Instead, you having to spend any amount of time like looking for it. And I'm actually thinking the difference between that scenario and the current experience with Google. I'm looking at, you know, ChatGPT and how precise the answers are when I'm
Mhm.
asking a precise question versus Google. It's like Google looks to me now like, you know, we're in a dark ages
Mhm.
of like, it's still way behind. You know, it's very clear the search results are being manipulated. So it's kind of like a pay for play. You know,
Mhm.
those who pay actually get in front of you, overriding like the relevance of their product or service that, you know, they actually deliver, they're actually selling. And I'm thinking, you know, going back to this without like going further on a, you know, on a limb right here, how do you envision that? Do you think that that's a possibility? How close are we to having that person, that training body, that AI partner that will be your dedicated personalized support,
Mhm.
not like a general language model that actually gives you like general information, and then, you know, of course you got to do a lot of prompts. Actually something that delivers it to you like exactly how you need it without any type of major effort.
I have two things on that actually. One is that, again, the answers or the data that it's providing you, the support that it's providing you, is only as good as the data it sits on. And as the masses start to introduce training and data and all of that into the AI models, it gets convoluted and the answers are sometimes not as great as they could be, and it's providing wrong information. It needs to evolve more to be able to filter out certain things. And I think my second point is that it needs to be a two-way. You know, you rely on it to give you information, but then you also are correcting it if it's wrong, or you're providing information back. And I think it also needs to rely on, you know, it needs to be kind of a two-way. It's asking you questions as well. Like, why did you do it that way? You usually do it that way. right? So in an instance where you provide different information than you did before, it can say, why was that different than it has been in the past? Which right now AI just sits there dormant, not doing anything until you prompt it to do something. Whereas if it could ask you, if it was truly understanding what you search, where you go, the emails you write, learning your voice through being on your calls and hearing you speak and learning things about you. And it could ask you questions like, for instance, I joke all the time with my team, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I just had an AI Savannah that could attend meetings for me when I'm on PTO, or answer emails for me while I'm on PTO, and then I don't have to put it out of office and I don't have to catch up when I get back. In order to do that, it would need to read all my emails and be attached to my email box and learn my voice. But if I am writing an email to a friend and a team member on my team, I might be using a different voice than I use when I write an email to a client. Don't tell anybody. But
it's gonna be just you and I know, and whoever's watching this.
Yes, but it needs to be like, why did you answer this client differently than this other client? And I would need to provide it with that information. Oh, well, that client is not as happy with our services right now, so I'm trying to be careful with how I word things. It needs to learn those nuances, and it needs to be able to prompt to ask when there's a difference. And I think there's a long way to go with the evolution of AI, but I think there needs to be some regulations on, not heavy because it'll ruin what we've got, right? But there needs to be some ways, some things that are put in place, parameters, so to say, to allow for the data to be more correctable, and also needs to be more, I think, two-way street of learning. It needs to ask you questions as much as you're asking it questions.
Let's switch a little bit towards the human side.
Yeah.
Right. Up until the robots are taking over and everything, I think we're gonna have a little time to enjoy.
Yeah.
We don't know how that's gonna look like once they're taking over.
Yeah.
Probably they're gonna kill us all, right? But while we're still alive, I'll say we make the best of it. So, current situation, I told to someone that works at a very large management company, and they share with me that a certain part of their company, a certain geographical area, their turnover at the service manager level, at the site level, it's 90%. This is the information that's like vetted. Vetted in a way that the source is like 100% credible.
Yeah.
When we're talking about that type of employee turnover, levels of turnover, I'm assuming that on a tech level, on a leasing agent's level, is not a lot rosier than that. But you would, if you would to scour the internet or ask ChatGPT or whatever, that's not information. And I actually did some research following that conversation with a particular individual, and all I could find was like some information from a survey from an NAA, which was dated, right? It wasn't like very current. The show turnover rates in a 30%. So we're talking about here a difference, and not to say that the rates were not correct at the time what the survey was finished, but they're not relevant to today's conversation.
Yeah.
So how do we address that? How do we improve the employee experience, especially in an era where we use technology to leverage just about everything? How about we do that to actually have happier employees and hopefully longer lasting? We convince them by leveraging technology to stay with us longer, to spend more time with us. What do you say?
I think there's a lot, and I do a lot of research on motivation. We have a gamification platform, and gamification is based in human psychology, right? What motivates people, and what motivates one person might motivate might not motivate another person. For instance, I always say competition usually motivates most people, right? Like if you can benchmark yourself against someone else, you're like, I want to do better. I personally am not motivated by competition. If there's a competition, I am like, you win. Go ahead. Go ahead for me. That actually demotivates me personally. And so when we think about gamification and it's not a one size fits all, what motivates everyone is differently. And I think that's where we can leverage things like AI, for you can get information from people based on their habits, based on their patterns, based on how they interact with their job, how they interact with people, how they interact with systems that they use to measure their engagement and say, this is an engaged employee. If an employee is engaged and motivated and performing, then they're less likely to turn over, right? And so as we've rolled out our platform to many employees and many different companies, we've started to discuss within our team, how can we measure that engagement based on the interactions that we're seeing, based on how can we measure what motivates different employees by providing a variety of different experiences that they can have in gaining progress towards their performance. And so we can take that data, log into their system daily, they participate in company events, or they give kudos to their other fellow team members, or they take training courses that are not assigned to them. We can prompt them with questions, and I think if you tailor that, if you're able to use technology to tailor the experience towards what is important to them, or gather information based on their interactions to learn what's important to them and what drives them. There's a lot of assumptions that happen, like people want more money, or people want, especially like in maintenance. I was just having this conversation actually with somebody. It's like we need more growth opportunities. Growth can look like a lot of things, right? Some people want to maybe grow and be a VP someday, or, something like that. Some people might just want to grow with their skills. They want to learn new skills. Some people might just want to be a teacher of things, right? And I've talked about doing like peer training, like a mentorship program, or even peer videos, like being able to have a repository where people can create like, this is how to fix this kind of sink when it's broken, or something like that. Those are also growth opportunities for people, being able to share, being able to learn, being able to be more challenged. So having that, a lot of our maintenance actually is our highest adopted user in our system. And we've seen and learned based on our data that the competition factor is a strong motivator for most of our maintenance team members. But being able to like challenge another property, like I bet, I can turn my units this much faster than you guys, and have a little competition there, could be a growth opportunity, because you're pushing your limits of what you have been able to do in the past and pushing it a little bit further. So that's just an example of, growth could look like so many different things, and being able to tailor the experience and understand the psychology behind it when you're dealing with humans is how you can achieve that factor.
So two questions stem from, one is, how do we actually personalize? And then how do we track the satisfaction level? Let's just say that we're imagining a system that personalizes this program for each individual based on what growth and opportunity means to them, right?
Yeah.
That's what you were just describing. How do we measure? How do we measure that? And are you at a point where actually you're able to make those suggestions, like to personalize the experiences, to be like very on point with suggestions about each individual? Secondly, do you have now enough data points to be able to draw conclusion in saying that, hey, we suggested, company adopted it, and because they adopted it, we're not looking at 90% turnover rates now for the service managers in this company. A year later, after doing all of that, they drop to like 60%. Is there any of that like current situation? Is it in the works? What is the status of that?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Avanti Residential is our sister company. They've been on the longest on our platform, and throughout the 3 years they've been on our platform, they've reduced their employee turnover by 40%. I recently just went to their leadership summit, and from a feedback standpoint, almost every employee of Avanti that came to our booth at their leadership summit thanked us. I've never had a company that's provided so much transparency on how I can perform better and how I can grow. I got a promotion because I was able to show that I was the highest performing in this certain area. And so we got so many comments, and heartwarming to me because we're making a difference in team members' lives. But from a data perspective, we are seeing a reduction in turnover. Some things that we're hoping to develop right now, we're starting small, and we're just using AI to develop a training bot. So it doesn't provide you the training, it just reads your performance and recommends training content for you that says, hey, looks like you're not performing well in this area. You might want to check out this training course available to you so that you can perform better. And so that's at the base level where we're starting, so that we can start to enhance that, right? Our next step after we get this training AI recommendation involved is to we're currently analyzing the data points that we have and trying to create a meaningful engagement score so that we can measure team members' engagement across a variety of different areas to show how engaged they are in their job, in their career, in their company, and use that engagement score to have AI make recommendations such as maybe they're not in the right job. Like centralization has brought up the conversation a lot of like what makes an assistant manager great is not what makes a property manager great, Totally. And so there are different skills, and historically there's been a very linear growth path. So using AI to say like maybe they're in the wrong position, or maybe, and that's why they're not engaged, or maybe different things, but to also be able to predict, hey, this is an employee that might turn over because their engagement was high and it's dipped. So what's going on there? We are not there yet, but we're taking baby steps to try and leverage those types of things.
When this journey is complete with with what you just described, that information, how would that information be flowing, and how would it be like disseminated? How do you imagine like actually working in real life? If I was to be a client, and you will sell ideally when we're done at the end of the journey, and we provide this type of a tool to you, this is what it would look like, and you just kind of like walk me through what's happening actually in real life. What would that look like?
Well, I think of it very similarly to the resident experience. A lot of focus happens on those touch points, right? Those touch points with your resident, those touch points with your prospect, and knowing the journey that a resident goes through from prospect to loyal resident to renewal, hopefully many times over, and then eventually move out. That can be also translated to the employee experience. What does their onboarding experience look like? Similar to the residents, their move-in experience could dictate whether they renew or not, right? And an employee's onboarding experience can dictate whether they're going to stay with your company long term or not. And understanding those different touch points that they have and being able to analyze their sentiment along that journey is an important factor to understanding how to analyze the data and predicting things like turnover or making modifications such as people in the job that they're in, the role that they might play, or leadership. Maybe there's a leadership issue and we need to invest in leadership training for the leaders of our companies so that we can have a better culture and keep our employees for longer. So understanding those touch points, understanding the critical factors that impact somebody's decision to leave a company or to stay with a company, and then finding out what data point matches those that we can analyze to make predictions or decisions.
It's fascinating to me. We're looking at this employee situation that has gotten worse over the years. I don't hear often us considering our employees customers, because they are, they're the internal customer.
Yeah.
It's what we call, to me, things should go in this order, right?
Yep.
You take care of the internal customer, he or she takes care of your external customer.
Exactly.
You don't put the external customer first because you could never provide amazing customer service for unhappy employees.
Yep.
You gotta address the employees first. You gotta make sure that they're happy. They're actually excited to be out there and represent, be an ambassador for your company, sell your apartments, service your apartments before you focus on the resident. Because without good service, you will have no residents.
Exactly.
Or you will have, and you will create that proverbial revolving door to where, you're gonna have incredibly high turnover rate in residents, therefore cost, vacancy loss and cost associated with turning the units. So when it goes to onboarding, you mentioned onboarding, are there any specific initiatives that you are focusing on during this part of their employee journey?
We don't specifically have any features that are focused on onboarding right now. However, we have received feedback that some of our clients are using our tool for onboarding because all of the systems that they need to learn are feeding data into our systems. They have hyperlinks to get to those systems where they log in. I've gotten feedback from some team members that have said, hey, this has made onboarding so much easier for me because I can go to my scorecard and I can see all of the expectations I have, where I'm supposed to perform, but I can also see the systems that they come from and link to them, so I never forget, like, oh yeah, we use this system for maintenance, or oh yeah, this is our CRM that we use at this company. And it's been a helpful tool for them in that way. So it's all in one spot for them, and they can understand the values of the company, the performance of their property, all of the statistics of their property, so they can easily, like from day one, they can know all of those statistics, like what is our per square foot rent, what is our economic occupancy, what is any of those data points that you might need to know to be familiar about your property from an investment standpoint as well are right there. So that's kind of the feedback that I've received so far.
Savannah, thank you for visiting today. It's been great having you as a guest here in our little studio. What are some things you're looking forward to for the second part of 2025 and then maybe 2026 and beyond?
Oh, wow. I will say that I am looking forward to, in real estate, I've been in real estate for a long time, and we always have the ups and downs. We've been going down for a little bit now, and I've seen a lot of positivity and more coming. And I think whether or not our economic situation turns around or not, I do think that our outlook is being more optimistic, and I really look forward to that continuing. And experiencing the resiliency of our industry.
Thanks again, Savannah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.